Hello developers, welcome to day 14 of the 30 days of JavaScript challenge. Today presents another chance for us to engage with challenges and further enrich our understanding of JavaScript concepts. Let's dive in and make the most out of this learning journey. Today's challenge says, given a function fn, an array of arguments args, and a timeout function t in milliseconds, return a cancel function cancel fn. So that is the challenge. Then it continues and says that after delay of cancel time ms, the returned cancel function cancel fn will be invoked. Then you are told how you can use that with the setTimeout function that we learned about it yesterday. Then it says that initially the execution of the function fn should be delayed by t milliseconds. If before the delay of t milliseconds the function fn is invoked, it should cancel the delayed execution of fn. Otherwise, if cancel fn is not invoked within the specified delay time t, fn should be executed with the provided args as arguments. Then you have an example here to explain it further. So let's say you have a function fn that takes a number x, then takes that x times 5. And the argument passed to that function is 2, and the time is 20. This will return to a 10 because you can see that the cancel time ms is 50. And since 20 is less than 50, that means that this function will be called and it will return 10. Okay, let's continue the example 2. Example 2, it takes a number x and finds the exponential of that number, x power 2. And if the argument is 2 and the time passed is 100, you can see the output is an empty string. Because if you look at the cancel time ms, it's 50. And 100 is greater than 50. That means that this function will be delayed for 100 seconds. And this cancel timeout will wait for 50 milliseconds. That means that this cancel function will be called before this function. That's why you get an empty array, because this function was not called at all. Example 3, it takes two numbers x1 and x2, then finds the product of x1 and x2. So if the argument is 2 and 4 and the time is 30, it will return 8. And 8 is 2 times 4, because you can see the cancel time is 100 ms and the input time is 30. And 30 is less than 100 ms, is less than 100 milliseconds, so this function will run. And this function will return the product of 2 and 4, that is 8. And that is how we should solve this challenge. And the constants are fn should be a function, and args should be a valid JSON array, and the length of the argument should be between 1 and 10. The time should be between 20 milliseconds and 1000 milliseconds, and the cancel time ms should be between 10 milliseconds and also 1000 milliseconds. So before you solve this challenge, let us first learn some key concepts, then we solve it. The first key concept that we learn is the clearTimeout function. And this function is used to cancel a timeout that was previously established by calling setTimeout. So yesterday we talked about setTimeout, and we said that a setTimeout function is used to execute a piece of code or a function after a specified period of time. Maybe I can just remind you. We said that setTimeout function takes in a callback function, and the delay time as parameters. So let me use an example. I'll create a function here. Create a function. I'll use the basic function syntax. I'll call this function say hello. And what this function does, it just logs hello world. So I'll just log hello world. Like that. World. So this setTimeout function can delay this function in a specified period of time. So in this callback function, I can pass my function like that, say hello. Then in this delay, I can put the time I want this function to delay in milliseconds. So yesterday we delayed this function in 2 seconds, and it says that 2 seconds is equivalent to 2000 milliseconds. So now if I run this code, this will be logged in the console after 2 seconds. So I can just confirm that. Let's wait for it in the terminal. So you can see 1, then 2, then it will log hello world in the console. And that is the work of this setTimeout function. And we also say that this function, instead of putting it outside here, you can just put it inside here as an anonymous function without a name, like that. And it will still also work. And also you can use this, you can see it still works. It will log hello world after 2 seconds. Also you can just use the arrow function syntax like this. And also it will still work. So this is what we learned about yesterday. But I just want to add some content on this setTimeout function. So let me just go back to the initial code the way it was. So let's say you have a a function that says hello, but in this case it takes an argument, then says hello, the name of that person, like that. It says hello, then a name. Then I want to call this function, but I want to delay it in 2 milliseconds. So this setTimeout function has a third parameter here where you can put the arguments. In this case, I'll put the name. So if I put name, like if I say done, it will say hello done after 2 seconds. You can see here I passed the argument as the third parameter of the setTimeout function. And this parameter will be passed to this say hello function, which one is here. So it will log hello, then this name that I passed it here. So if I run this code, you can see it will log hello done after, it will say hello after 2 seconds, just to delay for 2 seconds, say hello done. So I missed a space. There should be a space here. You can see, but it says hello done. So let me just run this code again for that space to be seen. You can see hello, then there's a space, then done. And this is how you use the setTimeout function. Then this setTimeout, it returns a timeout ID. You know, it's a function, it must return something. So it returns a timeout ID. So you can, if you assign this to a variable, so I'll assign this to a variable, I'll call that variable timeout ID. Timeout ID. Then I can log this ID here. So let me log that ID also. I can log the timeout ID. So if I run this code, I should see hello world, then also this timeout ID should be logged. And this is the return of this timeout ID. You can see it's here. It's an object. It says the idle timeout 2000, the idle start time, and there's a lot in it. And this is what is called the timeout ID. And this timeout ID is the one that is used by this clearTimeout method to clear a timeout, to cancel a timeout. I've said that this clearTimeout method is used to cancel a timeout that was established by calling the setTimeout method. Now if I want to clear this timeout, I'll call the clearTimeout method using this timeout ID. So let us see how we can do that. We have seen that this line of code, line will log before this one, because that is the asynchronous nature of this timeout, because it delays this log for some time. So if you want to clear this timeout, and I've said that this clearTimeout function will be used to cancel a timeout that was established. So we have established a timeout for this function for 2 seconds. So if you want to clear that timeout, you can use the clearTimeout function. And the clearTimeout is written like this. So let me just comment this. So I'll just write clearTimeout. And this clearTimeout takes in this timeout ID as input. And this timeout ID is returned by this setTimeout. So if I put here that timeout ID that is defined here in line 7, and I run this code, this will not run. This line of code, this function will not be called at all, because that timeout was cleared. So if I run this code, I expect to see nothing in the console, because this function will not run, since the timeout will be cleared before even the function runs. Let me just check. I missed. It's a clear timeout. Did I miss the spelling? Didn't miss the spelling. Let me just save it again. Let me wait for it to run. And you can see nothing logged in the console, because this timeout was cleared. And that is the function of this clearTimeout function. Now that you know about the setTimeout function and the clearTimeout function, we can comfortably solve this challenge. So this challenge says, given a function, an array of arguments, and timeout t in milliseconds, we should return a function, cancel fn. So I'll create my function. Let me use the normal function syntax today. So I'll create a function. function. I'll call it cancelable. You can just call it any name. This is the name that I found that was code for me. So I'll call it cancelable. And what this function takes in a function fn, an array of argument args, and timeout t in milliseconds and t. Then what this function should do, it should return another function. So this is a higher order function because I've seen it returns another function called cancelFn. Returns another function called cancelFn. So this is what this function should do. It will take fn arguments args and time t. Then it will return a function cancelFn that will do something. So you can continue reading it. So it says after delay of cancel ms, it returns the cancel function fn will be invoked. So this one will only be invoked after this delay of this time, and we'll see how we'll apply that. So let's just continue. And this setTimeout function should be called with this cancel fn and cancel time ms. We'll see how to do that. Initially, the execution of the function fn should be delayed by t milliseconds. So this function fn should be called, but it should be called after a delay of t milliseconds. And I've already seen how to delay a function using the setTimeout function. So I can just create the setTimeout function here. So I'll say setTimeout function, and I've said it takes in a callback function and the delay time. So the delay time, we know that it's t, so this must be a callback function here that you still don't know it, and the delay time is t milliseconds. This t is the one that is passed. This is the one that is passed here, and we can access it inside here like that. Then this callback function, we're supposed to call this function fn. So I'll just create a function. I'll use the arrow function syntax. Then here I'll call fn, and I'll call fn with args. But this args is an array. We've seen here args is an array of arguments args. So this args is an array. So if you want to call it with this function, we can use the spread operator that we learned, so that we can spread each individual item of this array and pass it to this function. And that is the work of this spread operator. So you have created a setTimeout function that takes in this callback function, and the work of this callback function is just to call this function fn using this args. But this function should be delayed with t milliseconds. Okay, we can just continue. It says here, before the delay of t milliseconds, the function fn is invoked. So if this time is big, this fn can be invoked. Okay, and this fn should cancel the delayed execution of fn. So the work of this cancel fn is to cancel the execution of this. And you have seen that to cancel an execution of a timer, you can use the clearTimeout function. It can cancel the timeout that was previously established by the setTimeout function. So inside here, we can use the clearTimeout, this function, and you have seen that this clearTimeout expects a timeout ID, and this timeout ID is returned by this setTimeout function. So this one you can just save this return thing here. You can say const timeout ID, like the way we did before. So this setTimeout will return a timeout ID, and this timeout ID is the one that will pass it in this clearTimeout function like that. Okay, you can just continue. Before the delay of time t, the function fn is invoked. It should cancel the delayed function. Otherwise, cancel fn is not invoked with the specified delay time t. Fn should be executed with the provided args as argument. This is the solution, but you can use example 1 to test it. So I'll just copy this example 1 here. I think this is the function. So I'll just copy that and put it here. So I'll save it as a variable const. So this will be my fn. So I can call this cancelable. So I'll just call cancelable like that. And I'll use fn as this fn that I've defined here. So I'll write here fn. Then my args should be this one, an array of one number, that is 2. So I'll just put an array here of one number, which is just 2. Then the third argument t is 20. So I'll just put here 20. So you know that if you call this function, it will return another function. So you can either invoke it here or assign it to a variable. So I'll just do how we have done initially. I'll just assign it to a variable. So I'll call that variable cancelFn like that. You know, this is a function, and we call it cancelFn. So if here down here I invoke cancelFn, you have seen it says here in the example here in the question, it says this cancelFn should be called with a specified cancel ms. And if you want to delay it in this cancel time ms, you can use this setTimeout function. So I'll just use this code to test it. So I'll just copy that and paste it here. I think I copied excess, so I can just remove. Should be that way. So this cancel fn is what you have defined it here. And this cancel time ms is what is provided. So in example 1, let's just check. In example 1, this cancel time ms is 50 milliseconds. So I can just replace this one with 50 milliseconds like that. So yeah. So now if I run this code, this function here will be passed in this fn. This args is here, args, this 20 will be t. And this setTimeout function will call my function, in this case, this function that takes a number and multiplies by 5 with these arguments, in this case 2. So it will take 2 times 5. So this function should return 10. But it will return 10 after it has delayed for t milliseconds. And this case t is 20. So this our function here will delay for 20 milliseconds. Then after it has delayed, this return function will cancel the timeout after this specified time, that is 50. So in this case, we expect that this function, if n, will run before this one, because 50 is more and 20 is less. So this one will run before this one has run. So if I run this code, I expect the results to be 20. But now we'll not see 20 because let us first log this one so that you can see 20 in the console so that you can test it is true. So because if you run this .log, you will not see anything in the console. So I'll just log this. This is where we get our results. When you call this function, is where our results will be gotten. That's why I'm logging the function. And if I run this code, I expect to see 10 in the console. So let's wait for it and see. But it will take 20 milliseconds. But 20 milliseconds is so fast. You can say I see 10. And that is what you expect in example 1. Okay, you can go to example 2. Example 2, the value of fn is different. So I'll just copy this fn of example 2. I'll just copy that and paste it here. Okay, then it calls cancelable with fn. Then args is same, is just 2, but this time t is now 100. So this one will be 100 for example 2. Then we'll call this cancelable with the same ms 50. So this time our function inside here will take more delay time than this timeout function. So this function will not run at all, as we saw in our previous example, because it will be cleared before it has run. So we don't expect anything in the console. See, I'm logging the results, but we won't expect anything. So if I run this, I won't get anything in the console because this function will delay for a longer time. Before it run, it will be cancelled. So nothing is in the console. But if I change this time here to like 150, I expect this inner function here will run. So if I run this code, I expect something in the console because this outer function, this cancel fn, will take a longer time than this inner function. So I expect something like 4 because I've said the input is 2 and 2 squared is 4. But the example was using 50. So I'll return my example 50, and if I return 50, I'll get nothing in the console. And the third example, the function also changes. So I'll just copy this function for example 3. I didn't mean to open this file. So I'll just copy this fn for example 3, it ends here. So I'll just copy that and replace that with this my function here. Then the value of args will now be 4, it will now be 2 and 4. So it will be two numbers, 2 and 4. I'll just add the 4 there. Then the time t will be 30 milliseconds. So I'll replace this one with 30 milliseconds. Then the time ms, this one will be 100. Like that. So if I save this code and run it, I expect this function to run, and this function takes this 2 times 4. So I expect 8 in the console. So if I run this code, I expect it to log 8 because our function will take a less time than this outer function. So our function should run and display 8 in the console. That is exactly what you see in the console. So yeah, that is the solution for this challenge, guys. See you in the next challenge. Peace out.